all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, who's Jessica then? And what does that Dairy Queen look like? Then they start to really feel like a person. Whereas when we leave our characters in sort of these vagaries, these big emotions and these big ideas, we don't have anything to hang the characters or the emotions on.
Welcome to the Story A Day podcast. This is Julie Duffy from storyaday.org, encouraging you to be a writer every day, not someday. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome back to the Story A Day podcast. It's Julie here from Story A Day, and this episode is bringing you the second half of my conversation with the author Gwen E Kirby, who wrote the debut collection of short stories, Shit Cassandra Saw. Again, there may be some saltier language than normal in this podcast, not a lot, just a little, just to warn you in case that kind of thing is something you're sensitive to. Gwen Kirby is the author of this debut collection, has an MFA from Johns Hopkins University, a PhD from the University of Cincinnati. Her work has appeared in One Story, Tin House, Guernica, Mississippi Review, Smoke Long Quarterly, lots of other great places. She is currently the Associate Director for Programs and Finance at the Sewanee Writers Conference at the University of the South, where she also teaches creative writing. Last time, if you haven't listened to that episode, we talked more about her collection. This time, we're talking more generally about writing and about how to turn characters into something that's not really a character, but someone that feels really real on the page. We talk about writing as women and about women. We talk about writing in this moment in history and generally geek out about writing. Join us for the conversation. Pull up a chair, grab a beverage. I hope you enjoy it. I hope it leaves you feeling super inspired to get back to your writing. And yeah, enjoy the conversation. I'll see you on the other side. Let me ask you this. What are you not asked about your writing or about this particular collection that you wish people would ask you about?
Oh gosh, that is a great question. I almost have no idea what the answer is because I feel like I've been so lucky with this book in that people have asked me a lot of questions. I guess some of this hasn't been asked at all, but I think I get asked so much in the book about women's anger, and I would love for people to ask me a little bit more about like women's community. I think sisterhood and friendship between women are really at the heart of this story. I mean, they're in so many of the stories. I mean, Inishmore is about a pair of sisters, and We Handle It is about a group of teenagers, and the softball story is about a group of girls, and Casper is about these three girls working together at this unclaimed baggage store. And that for me is, I think when you talk about anger and rage and things like that, it can sound very isolating. There's something so isolated about being angry. But I want the book to feel really choral and communal, both in the way that the friendships work for the women and also in the way that I hope all of the voices come together through all the different stories. And so, yeah, I wouldn't mind being asked more about sort of like women's friendship and sisterhood, because I think that is as essential to the book as anger.
Yeah, and as you were talking, I'm thinking about the story Marcy breaks up with herself, and she has a friend in that story who is important, but not in a kind of like idealized, she swoops in and saves her life way. She just comes and sits with her. Mm-hmm. And it's so important. And I think we're so conditioned to read stories where everything's a romance or everything's resolved or everything's miserable. And that's not what you're doing.
No, it's not. And there's a wonderful book. I believe the name is Gail Carriger. I'm so sorry, Gail, for messing up your last name, called The Heroine's Journey. And it talks about how we all know the hero's journey, which is this very like solitary journey with assistance on the way. And she makes this argument that the heroine's journey is a journey toward finding and building community, that is beginning in isolation and ending in community. And I think for almost all the women in my story, like even that one friend is everything, and Here Preached His Last, which is about this woman who's having an affair while this dead ghost watches her have sex. She has a best friend in that story who sticks with her the whole time and doesn't judge her and, is there for her. And I I don't know, that kind of friendship is so essential to me, just kind of surviving my everyday life, that I don't want my women characters to feel isolated. I want them to feel like they have community.
I think that's so important because I certainly didn't see that in literature growing up. And so much of,
me either.
yeah, my character and my expectations for life, because I was a big reader, were formed by that. And I'm so happy that you're writing these stories and they're out there for other, I was going to say young women, but for other people to read and have in their lives.
Thank you. That's so true about books growing up. My favorite book growing up was Jane Eyre. And, you know, man, the minute she made friends with Helen, that chick dropped dead. Like she was no,
she's alone, right? She's alone.
So isolated. Yeah. Though I suppose my other favorite was Anne of Green Gables, and she has a very best friend who sticks with her through thick and thin. So maybe I got lucky that I had both.
But the people, well, no, I'm going to go on a feminist rant here and say, you know, talk about the fact that the books by women and for women don't tend to be the ones that are in, or didn't tend to be the ones that were in the canons. So I'm very happy that there's so many strong voices out. Just one of the things I really like about your stories that this was supposed to be an interview and I'm just raving, but these women are real, right? They're doing things that you couldn't have got away with writing about 60 years ago, but it's just how we exist. They go to the bathroom, they have sex, they swear, they have revenge fantasies. It's, you know, it's just so real.
Thank you. I mean, I feel very cognizant of how lucky I am to be a woman writing right now and able to be as frank as I am. I also have been, I guess, a little surprised maybe at how much the collection is talked about in terms of women and not in terms of like stories or characters or craft. I feel like there is still this just like, oh my gosh, it's women being people. Whereas if I was a man who'd written a book about men going to the bathroom and having sex and having revenge fantasies and all those things, I don't know how much we would be talking about like manhood, or like, you know, we would just be talking about personhood. And I think the lens of women and women's rage obviously is an enormously important part of the book, but I certainly have been cognizant through my experience of publishing it, how much it is like lady times when I wasn't, you know, when I was writing each individual story, I wasn't like, oh my God, what's feminism going to do for me today? I was kind of more just like, you know, this woman's a person. What do I think she might do? How might she act?
I do think actually that, you know, like totally get that. I do think we would still be talking about these stories, even if we weren't in a moment where it's unusual to hear women written about this way, because they are what I'm always trying to get people to do, which is not treat your characters like characters, but they feel like real people.
Oh, thank you. That's, I think, one of the highest compliments you can give a story. So I appreciate that.
Do you have any tips for people? I mean, you're immersed in this, so I don't know if you're thinking about how you do it, or but like, what tips would you have for people for really abandoning that sort of, I'm going to create a literary character who's going to be, you know, an emblem of whatever my message, and just, you know, how do you get characters on the page?
I think about this a lot when I'm teaching, and I think it's to try to make sure that your character is not all good, not all bad, that they want something, but that they want it for, that they want something specific and they want it for a reason. I think I often, you know, I'll have, when you get like literary characters, I'll be talking to my student, I'll be like, what do they want? You know, and they'll be like, love. I'm like, okay, well, that's good. We all want love, right? But like, you know, what do they really want? I'm like, all right, well, they want a girlfriend. I'm like, okay, even better, you know, so when do they want a girlfriend? You're like, all right, well, they want to ask Jessica on a date to the Dairy Queen down the road before it closes for the winter, you know, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, who's Jessica then? And what does that Dairy Queen look like? And, you know, then they start to really feel like a person. Whereas I think when we leave our characters in sort of these vagaries, these big emotions and these big ideas, we don't have anything to hang the characters or the emotions on. And so they can feel, I think, pretty nebulous. And that's why they don't feel real to us. So I feel like I irritate the shit out of my students because I'm always like, why? And why? And why? And they're like, oh my God, Gwen, stop. I think once we get to that Dairy Queen, suddenly I'm dying to know what happens, in a way that when it's just like, they're lonely because their mother left. I'm like, well, all right, yeah, you know, again, we've all been Jane Eyre, but like, let's get way, 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 way more specific than that.
That's great. And your students are irritated but lucky. So that's great. So thank you for that. I think at that, I can't top that for advice, or I think, so I'm going to wrap up here. But thank you so much for being here. Do you want to tell people a little bit about what else you're up to? What's coming next for you?
Oh gosh. I mean, I'm trying to write a novel, so that's going as well as you'd expect, which is to say I'm just another anxious writer, anxious about writing a second book. As we said earlier, no writer's anxieties are unique. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm loving teaching here in Sewanee, and I'm one of the associate directors of the Sewanee Writers Conference. So if you're a writer out there who's interested in the conference, definitely check us out. It's a wonderful place to build community. And I don't know. I think mostly my next project is just still attempting to be any good at writing one day at a time. Some days go better than others.
You know what, that does bring up another question for me. I know people are often encouraged to write short stories to get the hang of writing and to get story structure and all that kind of stuff. I'm a big fan of short stories. I always want people to keep writing them, but only if that's something they enjoy. What differences and challenges are you finding with moving from working so intensively? Obviously, I imagine putting together a collection, you were working pretty intensively on short stories, and now you're moving into novel land. What challenges are you finding, and what joys?
That's a great question. And I guess I'd like to answer it like two-part. One is that I totally started writing short stories because I was like, oh, well, I'll get better at this and then I'll move on to novels. Novels are the things that I really love. And in the process of writing short stories, I absolutely fell in love with short stories. And I hope that I always keep writing short stories, because I think that there are things you can do in the short form that you just simply cannot do at a novel length. I mean, you could never sustain just like a list of shit that Cassandra sees in the future for a novel, and so I love the short form, and I've learned to trust myself by writing in the short form in a way that I'll always be really grateful for. For a novel, one of the biggest challenges for me is having the confidence in the premise of what I'm writing enough to continue going. I think in the short form, I'm willing to try anything for 3,000 words. I can push through that. I can be like, yeah, radioactive cockroaches. Why not? That seems like a great idea. But when I think about a novel, I do find myself sort of in that quagmire of what you were talking about earlier, which is what is literary? Like, what is important? And so shutting that down has been a big part of my process. And besides that, I think trying to remember sort of the things that I learned when writing short fiction, which is just to say, focus on this character. What does this character want? Why do they want it? What are they going to do next? And just really trying to stay in scene, just being like, all right, why am I in this scene? What do they need out of this scene? What's going to be different at the end of the scene than it was at the beginning of this scene? And try not to think like, what's going to be different 40,000 words from now, because I'm not going to, I just don't know. And when I get there, I'm sure what I'll discover is that I have to rewrite all the shit that I've already written, because I will have gotten somewhere different. Right. And that's okay. But I think for me, it's just really a lot of like booking myself up and being like, you can do it. Don't give up. Keep going. This is worth doing, which is, I don't know. I think that's pretty standard writer fare.
I'm happy to hear you say that, because I think that's actually like 90% of what gets us to success. Like, all the writing advice that we go and seek out is helpful, but I think the thing that really makes a difference is understanding that is a huge part of the process. So.
I really agree. And I think a lot of times the writing advice and stuff is super, super awesome once it gets time to like revise, but the trusting yourself to make the thing itself and to believe insanely that someone else would want to read it or sell it or manufacture it, it's all pretty bonkers. So just really try hard not to think about that when you're working on it, and just to think about the people in the world that you're making.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, what are some of the joys and opportunities you're finding in the longer form?
I think getting to be more patient. I think in the short story, I mean, as you can see, even with my titles, it's like, it's like you're being shot out of a cannon. A writer I really admire told me that a novel is like a train journey and a short story is like being hit with a train. And I love that. I think about that a lot. And so when it comes to the novel, just, realizing that I can linger in a scene, that I can write a longer piece of backstory when I get to a particular memory. And I actually find that really challenging because I've been working in short stories for so long. I feel like there's a part of me that's like, all right, girl, like, giddy up, running out of time, running out of space. And we're not running out of time and space. Obviously, you don't want to bore your reader and put in extraneous material, but you really can have a patience with your characters and with your plot that in a short story, I just feel like the whole thing is wound up so tight that there's no room for that, but there's less room for it.
Yeah, it's a different experience for sure.
It is. I mean, who knows? I'm like saying all this shit, like I've never finished a novel or published one. I could come back to you in a year and be like, that was all wrong. It was a terrible idea.
But it's your experience of it. So that's what we're digging into.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your experiences. I'm sure everyone's found this really inspiring and helpful. So thanks for being here. And everyone, rush out if you haven't already and buy a copy of Shit Cassandra Saw by Gwen E Kirby. It is an absolute delight. So.
Oh, thank you. This has been so much fun.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation in 2 parts with Gwen E Kirby. I certainly did. Hope it's got you inspired to do some writing. If you did enjoy it, why not share it with a friend, send them a link, or pop over to iTunes and give the podcast a review, something to spread the word. It's the more the merrier is always my motto. I hope you're inspired to do some writing, and I'm going to be having more guests like this on the podcast, so you can let me know what you liked about this episode. You can email me at julie@storyaday.org or pop over to the blog and leave me a comment. And what would you like to hear more of? What was the most intriguing part of the discussion for you? What were your ahas and takeaways? What crystallized for you as you listened to us chatting about writing? What will you put into practice? I'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, have a great writing week, and I will be back here very soon with a new episode of the podcast. Great to be with you. I will be speaking to you again soon. Keep writing. Thanks for listening. Why not come over to the blog at storyaday.org and check out this week's writing prompts and articles. And in the meantime, have a great creative week. And of course, keep writing.